On the night before Thanksgiving, 1971, a man in a dark suit and sunglasses boarded a commercial flight under the name Dan Cooper. He ordered a bourbon and soda. He lit a cigarette. And somewhere over the Pacific Northwest, he handed a flight attendant a note that would trigger the largest manhunt in aviation history. And then he vanished into a storm, wearing a parachute, carrying $200,000 in cash, and was never seen again. 55 years later, the FBI still doesn't know who he was. But in the last 4 years, a family in North Carolina has come forward with a parachute, a logbook, and a theory that might finally end the only unsolved hijacking in American history.
Welcome back to Unsettledys, the channel where we go looking for the moments history tried to forget. Today's case isn't from a distant century. It's a genuinely active mystery, one that federal investigators are reportedly still quietly working on right now in 2026. We're going to walk through exactly what happened on that flight in 1971, why the case went cold for decades, despite one of the largest investigations in FBI history, and why a discovery made in a storage shed has suddenly put one specific name back at the center of America's most famous unsolved crime. By the end of this video, you'll understand both sides of the story, the compelling case that's been built, and the reasons the FBI still hasn't officially closed the file.
On November 24th, 1971, a man calling himself Dan Cooper purchased a one-way ticket for Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 305, a short evening hop from Portland, Oregon to Seattle, Washington. He was described by crew and passengers as calm, polite, and unremarkable. Mid-40s, dark suit, black tie, a raincoat folded over his arm. Shortly after takeoff, he passed a note to flight attendant Florence Schaffner. She assumed it was a phone number and slipped it into her pocket without reading it, the way flight attendants often did with notes from passengers back then. Cooper leaned over and quietly told her to read it. He had a bomb in his briefcase. The note demanded $200,000 in cash and 4 parachutes to be ready and waiting when the plane landed in Seattle. The airline complied with every demand. The plane landed, the passengers and most of the crew were released unharmed, and the ransom and parachutes were delivered exactly as instructed. It's worth pausing on how routine this all felt to everyone involved at the time. The early 1970s were, improbably, the peak years of an American hijacking epidemic. Dozens of flights were commandeered every year, most for political asylum or ransom, and airlines had developed something close to a standard playbook for cooperating quietly and getting passengers home safely. A well-dressed man calmly demanding cash and parachutes barely registered as extraordinary to the crew handling him that night. It's also worth clearing up a persistent mix-up. The hijacker called himself Dan Cooper, not D.B. Cooper. A wire service reporter garbled the name while covering the story, mistakenly borrowing it from an already cleared early suspect, and the incorrect version stuck so thoroughly in the press that it's the name history remembers today. Cooper then ordered the plane back into the air, told the remaining crew to fly toward Mexico City at a low altitude and slow speed, with the landing gear down and the cabin unpressurized. Specific technical instructions that suggested he understood aircraft mechanics well. Somewhere over the dense, mountainous forest of southwestern Washington state, in the middle of a cold, driving rainstorm, Cooper lowered the plane's rear staircase and jumped into the night with the cash strapped to his body. Nobody on the plane saw him land. Nobody on the ground ever reported seeing him. He was never seen again.
The FBI's investigation, codenamed NORJAK for Northwest Hijacking, became one of the largest and longest manhunts in the Bureau's history, spanning 45 years and generating literally thousands of pages of files. Investigators interviewed and cleared hundreds of suspects. Search teams combed the forests of southwestern Washington for weeks, then years, looking for wreckage, remains, equipment, anything. In 1980, an 8-year-old boy named Brian Ingram was digging in the sand along the banks of the Columbia River during a family outing when he uncovered a decaying bundle of $20 bills, $5,880 in total,
later confirmed by serial number to be part of Cooper's ransom money. It remains, to this day, the only piece of physical evidence from the case ever recovered. No trace of Cooper, his parachute, or the rest of the money has ever surfaced. In 2016, after decades without a credible break, the FBI officially suspended active investigation of the case, stating it would only reopen with new physical evidence, a parachute or more of the money. Over the decades, dozens of names have surfaced as possible suspects, each championed by a different investigator convinced they'd finally cracked it. A paratrooper, an airline mechanic, a disgruntled Boeing employee, even, in one enduringly popular theory, a woman. Nearly all of them were eventually weakened or ruled out by inconsistent physical descriptions, alibis, or simple lack of hard evidence.
The case did leave one lasting, very physical mark on the airline industry, though. Within months of the hijacking, Boeing engineers developed a mechanical device, now known as the Cooper vane, a small aerodynamic latch fitted to the rear stairs of 727s specifically to prevent them from being lowered mid-flight. It's still standard equipment on that aircraft type today, a permanent engineering footnote to one unsolved night in 1971.
For most of the last decade, that seemed to be where the story ended. Then, in 2020, following the death of their mother, two siblings named Shantae McCoy and Richard McCoy III came forward with a theory their family had quietly carried for years, that their father, Richard Floyd McCoy Jr., was D.B. Cooper. The connection wasn't a stretch. McCoy, a Vietnam veteran, demolitions expert, and skilled pilot, carried out a strikingly similar hijacking just 5 months after the Cooper incident, commandeering a United Airlines flight, extorting $500,000, and parachuting out of the rear stairs of a Boeing 727 using nearly identical methods. Unlike Cooper, McCoy was caught within days, convicted and imprisoned, before escaping custody and eventually dying in a 1974 shootout with FBI agents. For decades, McCoy remained one of the FBI's most persistent Cooper suspects,
though never conclusively confirmed. In 2022, the McCoy siblings, working with longtime amateur investigator and YouTuber Dan Grider, located a modified military surplus parachute rig and a skydiving logbook stored in an outbuilding on the family's property in Cove City, North Carolina, left behind, they say, by their father decades earlier. Grider, who has researched the Cooper case for more than 20 years, became convinced the parachute matched the specifications of the rig Cooper used in 1971. The discovery was compelling enough that the FBI took notice. In 2023, agents met with Grider and Richard McCoy III in Virginia and formally took the parachute and logbook into evidence for testing. The Bureau's first active engagement with the case since officially suspending the investigation 7 years earlier. In February of 2026, the parachute was quietly returned to the family, without any public statement from the FBI confirming or denying what, if anything, their testing had found. What makes this development genuinely uncertain, rather than a tidy solved mystery, is that the FBI has never publicly confirmed a match. No DNA connection between McCoy and physical evidence from the original 1971 flight has been announced. The parachute's return to the family, rather than its retention as evidence in an active case, could mean the testing was inconclusive, or that it ruled McCoy out entirely, or simply that the Bureau isn't ready to comment either way. The McCoy family, for their part, has said the FBI's own agents indicated to them informally that they believe the case is solved. But that's a private conversation, not an official statement, and the Bureau has offered no public confirmation of it. For a case that has survived 55 years of false leads and premature declarations of victory, that distinction matters enormously. It's also worth sitting with what this theory would actually mean if true. Richard McCoy wasn't a stranger to his own family after 1971. He was a father who came home from that Thanksgiving flight, if the theory holds, and continued raising 2 young children for months afterward, before his second hijacking finally caught up with him. His children have said publicly that they don't seek to excuse what their father may have done,
but that they loved him, and that after keeping this secret out of fear for most of their lives, they simply wanted the truth to be told honestly, whatever it turned out to be.
It's a strange, very modern coda to a story that began in the middle of a 1970s hijacking epidemic, when air piracy in the United States was disturbingly routine, and a well-dressed man asking for a parachute barely registered as unusual to the crew who dealt with him. More than half a century later, D.B. Cooper remains equal parts unsolved federal case and genuine piece of American folklore. Every year, amateur investigators, retired agents, and enthusiasts gather in Washington state for an event nicknamed CooperCon, trading theories, comparing notes, and occasionally unveiling supposed new breakthroughs of their own. The case has inspired dozens of books, at least 2 feature films, a folk song, and an entire genre of internet forum dedicated to picking apart every detail of that single flight. It's the rare unsolved case that has managed to stay both a serious, ongoing federal matter and a genuinely beloved piece of pop culture at the same time, which is part of why the McCoy family's 2022 discovery generated as much attention as it did.
The 2022 parachute discovery is, by a wide margin, the most credible physical lead the case has produced since Brian Ingra found that buried cache on the riverbank more than 4 decades earlier. It has the right components: a family with a personal, painful reason to have kept quiet for decades, physical evidence matching the era and specification of the original equipment, and a federal agency willing to formally re-engage with a case it had otherwise closed the book on. But credible isn't the same as confirmed, and history has not been kind to previous Cooper breakthroughs that arrived with just as much confidence. Until the FBI says otherwise, on the record, with evidence the public can actually see, the case that began with a calm man in sunglasses ordering a bourbon and soda on a rainy November evening remains exactly what it's been since 1971. Open, unresolved, and still, technically, anyone's guess.